Welcome. I received a number of texts, I think three or four, from some people who had hoped to be here today, but they at last minute have some conflicts. So they're looking forward to having this recorded. Les said he would take care of that and it would be available. Um, Pirkei Avot, the ethics of the fathers or wisdom of the ancestors that we introduced last week. We'll do some more of that this week, and then we had to change around the dates. We won't be meeting next Wednesday, but then in 2 weeks we'll meet, and we're going to focus on the wise men of Helm, the wisdom of the literature that comes out of the Eastern European experience, and those stories and those witticisms and whatever. I think hopefully you'll enjoy that. But I wanted to do this whole little series respecting the tradition that in the 7 weeks between Passover and Shavuot, which we read about in the Torah last week, those 7 weeks, the tradition had developed that some communities will read or study one of the specific chapters of the book from the Mishnah known as Avot. Avot in Hebrew meaning fathers, but here it actually means the elders, the rabbis, the teachers, the heritage that they inherited. The literature is some 2,000 years old, maybe a few hundred years more than that. It is parallel to a lot of the literature that is in the New Testament and the early canon of Christianity as well. Some of the patristic fathers were aware of the Mishnah, and either they commented on or put in a different way, they stole some of the quotations and planted them in Jesus's mouth or in Paul's mouth, Peter's mouth, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, because they were all Jewish, good Jewish boys anyway. So we were able to get a little bit of an introduction. The pages that Stacy put on that are attached to the email, if you were able to see them, come from a selection, not from the entire text. It comes from the selection out of one of the prayer books that in the North American Jewish community. Some of the traditional Sidurim have indeed the entire book of Avot, the entire Mishnah, there in the prayer book, because it was part of the community's tradition, like I said, to read and study it every Shabbat between Passover and Shavuot. The book that we copied it from, rather than trying to put 20 or 30 pages there, the book that we copied it from does indeed have selections. And in a criticism of the editor who did this, some of the numbers are a little bit different of the chapter and verse. So if you happen to be trying to correlate it or to want to do further research into the actual Mishnah, what in here it might say chapter 2, verse or sentence 7, that actually may be number 6, or it may be number 14 or something. So I'm not sure how they justified doing their numbering. But when I was kind of looking up for some commentaries, I had to make sure that I was looking at the right thing, because it was sometimes difficult to find, because they're not including the entire sentence or the entire verse here. So let's jump right into it. Our pattern is that we always begin with a prayer. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitzanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. We offer our prayers and our thanksgiving to God, who sanctifies us with commandments and instructs us enables us to participate in this, in busying ourselves with Torah. Um, I think I mentioned to you last week, for those who are with us, or again, that what's on the recording, that it's also traditional to include this statement of that all Israel has a chelek, has is entitled to a portion of the world to come, and with the emphasis, hopefully being when they presented this, hopefully was an encouragement that by studying these words and by living the ethical life, you would certainly be rewarded with, or warrant a reward, or goodness in the world to come after death. Raises all kinds of questions as to when and how the Jewish people and the leadership and the literature reflected different theories, beliefs, philosophies, theologies of what happens after death. But at the time that this literature was written, there was a strong belief in in an actual reward and punishment system, and that although they didn't define what the world to come might look like, we would use a generic term of heaven versus hell. They didn't necessarily define it. They had all kinds of imagery. Some of the rabbis said, well, the world to come, if you're being rewarded with the world to come, that means that you can sit in the heavenly spheres with all of the saints and the rabbis who have gone before you, and sit at God's feet and study more Torah with all the learned ones. And others have other kinds of imagery that they presented of Olam Haba. But what the classical commentators have always said, and certainly, and I believe this as well, is that by studying this literature and incorporating it, adapting it into your own life, irrespective of what happens in the life to come, it will be more meaningful for this life, ba'olam hazeh. That each of us has not only a portion, but each of us has a responsibility and an obligation in this life. And we can enhance that by learning from this literature. That becomes the impetus and the motivation for studying this kind of literature, if you will. Okay. We got up to last week. We got up to what is numbered here as 110 and 112. We're introduced, no, I'm sorry, 112. We're introduced to a character whom I think the name probably is familiar to everyone, and that's Hillel. There are others who had the name. There was someone who went by the name of Hillel the Elder, but this is the Hillel whose cohort, if you will, was another rabbi by the name of Shammai. And Hillel and Shammai become not only for what they said and what they taught, but they become in Jewish literature, both the traditional rabbinic literature, as well as the fiction and the legend and the lore that develop about them. They become like I guess that the Hatfields and the McCoys. But it's a friendly competition. They disagree almost 100% of the time, or at least their disagreements are what what are referred to and what are included in the text. Now, having said that, and I'll talk about one or two examples, but having said that, the main the main thing to remember, and we saw this already a little bit last week, and we will see it again, is that when there are two different rabbis and they had different titles, one we called the Nasi, which today means the president, but then it meant like the leader of the court, more of a civil role, and then the Av Beit Din, who was the head of the rabbinic court, the more the religious functionary. Um, the uh, the Jewish tradition is to give, I don't want to say equal weight, but give attention and make sure that the literature includes both sides of an argument respectfully. Okay. Um, Ultimately, if there's a disagreement, if there's debate, at the end of the paragraph, it will say, and the law, the halakha is according to this particular rabbi, Rabbi Joshua, Rabbi Meir, Hillel, whatever the decision might have been. That could have been a majority vote of all of the other rabbis or all the disciples or the students, whatever it was, or it could have been an individual community that decided this is the way that we are going to observe and follow and participate in a particular custom, ceremony, behavior, whatever it might be. But again, the bottom line, and we continue to try to point this out, is that competing theories or interpretations or opinions are are always included respectfully. So, yes, there are many times in Jewish history when you had disagreements, whether it's Hillel and Shammai, whether it's the Ashkenazim and the Sephardim, those that came from the European background as opposed to the Spanish, Portuguese, and North Africa background, whether it's the Hasidim and the Misnagdim in the 16th and 1700s, those that followed the Baal Shem Tov and the let's look for joy in expression, and study is not as important as personal devotion, as opposed to those who felt that no study and understanding the halakha, understanding the Talmud and everything was the most important. So you had that in our day, we might say between reform / conservative and orthodox. There's always been the disagreements. The hope is that, as in our history, those disagreements will be, if not resolved, but at least will be treated and responded to respectfully. So Hillel and Shammai are there in the literature, disagreeing most of the time. Sometimes it's simplistic, sometimes it's very, very minute details and whatever. But I'll give you two, both of which you may have heard about before. One relates to the lighting of the Hanukkah, the Chanukiah, the Hanukkah menorah. The question is, what is the best way to light your candles? And again, it wasn't what in our day. It's we think of the candles, but in Hillel and Shammai's day, it was they had a little bit of oil, in each of the little holders there on their candelabra. But what is the best way, educationally, pedagogically, to symbolize the miracle that the Nes Gadol Hasham, the great miracle happened here? What is the miracle from Hanukkah. If you remember that, according to the legend and the story, that only this small cruse of oil lasted for 8 days, so that the Ner Tamid in the rededicated temple in Jerusalem, once the Maccabees had reconquered Jerusalem, that the Ner Tamid could be lit, not stay lit for 24 hours, but it could be lit on a regular basis. And they were worried about, were they going to have enough oil to be able to do that, until the runners came from other parts of the country and could bring the purified, the sanctified, the kosher oil to use in the Ner Tamid, as opposed to the oil that the Syrian Greeks had desecrated. And the little cruse of oil somehow managed to last for 8 days. So Hillel and Shammai, as good teachers, ask the question: if we're going to symbolize the miracle as a home ritual for every night of the 8 nights, what's the best way to do it? Is it by adding more light, because the miracle gets greater and greater and greater and greater and greater each night of the 8? Or is it by reducing somehow the amount of oil to be reminded of the diminishing of the amount of oil that they had in the temple? And they go back and forth as to which would be the better, let's call it, audiovisual aid for people to have in their home observance of Hanukkah. And so they wind up coming with a compromise. Now, sometimes that occurs in rabbinic literature. Sometimes there's a compromise. Sometimes there's a decision. We're going to follow one or the other. Okay? But the compromise, and you might remember, is when you have your Hanukkah menorah, your Chanukiah, okay, is you're putting in from right to left, unless you have a round one. So then somehow you have to decide where you're starting and whatever. But all right, and then you would go counterclockwise, but right to left. Okay, so you put in your first candle on the first night. You're going to have 2 candles on the second night. So you're adding a candle each time, because you're acknowledging that the miracle, the nace, became greater each night. So you're adding more fire each night, but to represent the diminishing amount of oil. So you add them, when you're adding your candles, you add them from left to right. That demonstrates the diminishing amount of oil. So they kind of, that's their compromise. We have a little bit of Hillel and a little bit of Shammai. There are other examples too. The other story with which people are familiar is more representative of the legacies of Hillel and Shammai, is that and depending on how you translate it, either someone who was trying to challenge the rabbis, the Jews, about their faith and their belief, or someone who was seriously interested in learning more about Judaism and possibly even converting. But anyway, this individual approaches Shammai first and says, teach me everything that there is to know about Judaism while standing on one foot. It's a very, very famous story. Now, what is not totally clear is who is standing on one foot. Is it the rabbi or is it the student? But I suppose that's irrelevant, okay? But teach me all that there is to know about Judaism while standing on one foot. Shammai's reaction is irate. What are you talking about? How could you do that? And he hits him over the head with a rod, with a branch stick, and sends him on his way. Okay. Because he's not doesn't take it seriously. All right. The same person approaches Hillel, who teaches or is the leader of a different yeshiva, a different academy. Goes to Hillel and says, teach me all that there is to know about Judaism while standing on one foot. And again, we still don't know who's standing on one foot, but Hillel looks the person in the eye and says, very famously, what is hateful unto you, do not do to anyone else. That is the essence of the Torah. Now go out and learn everything else. But here's the fundamental. Here's the bottom line. What is hateful to you, do not do to anyone else becomes the golden rule. It's sometimes phrased in the positive, sometimes in the negative, but that's Hillel's answer. And the rabbis then throughout history point out that there are two ways to respond to someone who is either challenging you or someone who is interested in getting a real answer. One is to be a stickler, and demand full attention and full respect for what they're asking. And the other is to be more lenient and more compassionate. And okay, let's take it step by step and go there and go from there. So Hillel and Shammai represent the two extremes, if you will. Most of the time they do disagree. Most of the time Hillel represents the more liberal or lenient interpretation. Most of the time Shammai represents a more conservative or a stricter interpretation, but it's not 100% of the time. It's most of the time. Sometimes they do agree, sometimes they need to find compromise, and sometimes the stories just go on and on and on. They are understood to be the last of what I described last week as the historians call the zugot, the pairs. Okay, the remaining names through the rest of the book of Avot, the remaining names of the rabbis are not identified as being either a Nasi or an Av Beit Din, either one that's associated with the civil, if you will, or the religious point of view and role to play in their academies. Others are just either contemporaries or they are known because of their personal lineage. Gamliel, the son of this one, and Jonathan, Yochanan, the son of this one, and whatever. But they're not necessarily identified for the roles that they played with their academies. Okay, that's my background. So if you do have the texts there, looking at the bottom of the first page, that's identified here as one meaning chapter 1, verse 12. Hillel says, "Be of the disciples of Aaron, loving peace and pursuing it, loving your fellow creatures and drawing them near to the Torah." Okay. I don't think any of us would have any difficulty with agreeing that personal ethical lifestyle can be based on loving peace, pursuing peace, teaching peace, loving our fellow creatures, drawing them near to the Torah or to sacred literature, if you will, in its most general sense. But some people might have an argument in claiming that to be the legacy of Aaron, in Moses's brother in the Torah. So I'm going to start with why. Okay, what do you remember when the stories that you bring up in your mind about Aaron, the high priest, Aaron, Moses's brother? Why would Hillel call him the archetype for someone who loves and pursues peace? Okay, Steve, your hands up first, but go ahead.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Just the obvious thing I'm thinking of incident of the golden calf, when he showed that he to a fault sort of gives folks the benefit of the doubt. And, maybe because, he thought, well, they're doing something that isn't quite right, but, I think they're going to come around, so
Okay, and
yeah,
let's
yeah, yeah,
let's
we'll let
put
them try to do this. And,
yeah, let's put that historically in context so that everybody Moses is on the top of the mountain. He's been up on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights. We haven't heard anything. We don't know what's going on. The children of Israel are getting impatient. They're at the base of the mountain. Moses brought us out here into the middle of the desert. We're going to die. It's cold. It's cold. We're hungry. We're thirsty. Whatever. Da 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 da. So they build this golden calf. That's the only type of worship that they knew from Egypt, right? Okay. All right. And Aaron participates in it. Aaron actually winds up taking a leadership role in that. You bring this and you bring this and you bring that, and we're gonna. Okay, all right. Now, so that's the context. So go ahead, Steve. I interrupted you, but
Yeah, yeah. Well, not really. Just the main concept is, we would like to think he wasn't trying to steer them in the wrong direction. He was just totally giving them the benefit of the doubt. He was maybe saying to himself, you know what, this is really wrong, but I'm going to let them figure it out on their own. So I'll let them, do a few things and, see what happens. So he was the one who was so I guess Hillel is telling us, give people kind of the benefit of the doubt, like rather than when that quote unquote the goy came to Hillel and said, teach me the entire Torah on one foot. He didn't say to himself, this guy is just jerking me around. He's an idiot. He's just playing tricks on me. He's going to say, you know what, maybe he's got a real intention here that's honest and true. And yeah, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt on that. So,
well, not only benefit of the doubt, but if you go back to this phrase here, one of Hillel's goals is to draw people closer to the Torah. So whether that's Israelites or whether that's people who just come and want to learn more, he's missionizing, so to speak. He says, okay, we'll bring them closer. It doesn't say bring all Jews closer to the Torah. It says loving all creatures. Okay, all right. So Rabbi Steve's interpretation here is that Aaron is the ultimate peacemaker because he gives people the benefit of the doubt. Somebody else come in with either a support or a criticism or
All right,
a modern example of this. Okay, Kent, go ahead.
I think, given the example of the golden calf, I think Aaron was stalling for time because nobody knew how long Moses was going to be up there, and not the reason, but the Hebrews were anxious, and it didn't happen the first day Moses went up. It was like they're waiting, they're waiting, they're waiting. Like, where is he? And Aaron's like, oh, gee, I hope he comes down pretty soon. In the meantime, do you see it? You know how long it must have been to collect
Well,
everything?
it's not only that. It says, what are these people going to do to me?
Right.
I mean, there's
Exactly.
a mob out there,
And
right?
he's his
Okay.
brother, right? So I think, one, he was stalling for time, but two, I find this interesting. Now, it wasn't necessarily, maybe it can be considered the Torah, but in the Torah, the two sons of Aaron who were killed for coming too close or into the ark of the covenant. Is that
Yeah.
accurate? I mean, okay, that's paraphrasing.
Yeah, offering fire. It's much later in the history. It's 30 some years later, but that's okay. Yeah,
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean,
hasn't happened yet.
it hasn't happened yet. I mean, relative to the golden calf business.
Right.
Right, but that's irrelevant to this. The fact that seems paradoxical to what Hillel shared here about coming closer. I mean, in a literal sense, right? Literally, they came to the Ark of the Covenant. They were told not to, and they died. Here he says, drawing them near to the Torah. Well, I'd tread lightly if I had known that story about the two sons being killed of Aaron. It's just something that came to mind. That's all.
Okay. It is the same word in Hebrew, incidentally, of approaching to offer the sacrifice or to come closer to the Torah. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Interesting. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
That's it.
Ladies, either Linda got something?
No.
Judy?
No.
Okay. All right. Okay. It's been a fascinating question throughout the ages of what did Hillel see in the character of Aaron that he refers to him as the peacemaker, as that we should all strive to be disciples. We should now my rabbi, when I first studied this material that many years ago, he said, a disciple means that you learn from, doesn't mean that you agree. Right? Okay. So I can be a student of my teacher, but it doesn't mean that I have to agree with the teacher. It means that I learn from the teacher. So we be of the disciple of Aaron, study mitalmidav. Be the students. Be one of the students of Aaron. Study his life. If you go ahead, Steve. That's right. You study his story and learn what you can from it. Doesn't mean that his behavior should be the model. Okay, so that's I always thought when my rabbi interpreted it that way, he gave me okay, that's a different way of looking at it. Go ahead, Ken. Yeah.
Yeah, just real quickly, it was one other thing I thought about it, and you had kind of touched on it just now a little bit. But early in the Exodus, Aaron was a mouthpiece for Moses in approaching Pharaoh.
Right.
And kind of an interlocutor where, I can imagine like saying, all right, Pharaoh, what Moses means to say is, in trying to broach an understanding between the two to do something as an emissary, not, in today's world, we see it every day in one way or another, where some nation steps up, whether they're well-intended or not, but to say, hey, we're going to bring people together. So maybe that was an element of it. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. So let's go on. If you look at the next page, down in their numbering of it's chapter 1, number 14. This is probably one of the most famous of Hillel's. Again, aphorism in Hebrew. In Hebrew, it's called a niv, like NIV. It's a little, like a pithy statement kind of thing, a quote, if you will. If I am not for myself, who will be for me? If I am for myself alone, what am I? And if not now, when? I mean, there are songs with that lyric and whatever, but it's probably one, if not the most famous quote from Hillel. What does it mean Okay, if I am not, if ain't an Eli Mila, if I am not for myself, if I'm not for myself, if I'm not taking care of myself or watching out for myself, who else is, who else is there? I should put myself first, if you will. Okay, but if I'm only for myself, what kind of person is that? What kind of human being is that? And then, if not now, if not recognizing the immediacy of the challenges to my life that society throws at me or that my friends throw at me, whatever, then when kind of thing. So, what did anybody have
Mm.
a comment on it?
I'm relating it to one of the things that you're told as a caregiver, where you have to take care of yourself first
Uh-huh.
before you can take care of anybody else. You have to be a whole person first before you can outreach.
Well, it's not only as a caregiver. I remember when I took classes in when we were working at summer camp, when you take classes in being a lifeguard at the pool.
Mm-hmm.
All right, okay, or with it going into the lake, only go if you're sure that you can come back.
Or they
Mm.
tell you on an airplane to use the
Right.
mask on yourself first
Uh-huh.
before anybody else.
Right, exactly. Okay. But if if your reputation is only that you're going to take care of yourself to the exclusion of others, that's different,
Right.
right?
It's like the
Mm.
first step in doing something is yourself, but it's one step.
Mhm. Okay.
Is that, Rabbi, is that a literal translation in the second question? What am I? Because it would make
Yes,
more
definitely
literal
it's
sense
what.
if it said, well, who am I? Right?
No, it's definitely.
But it
I
says,
mean,
what
now
am I? It's
that just may
interesting.
be his his literary style, not literary,
Yeah,
his oratorical style.
I get it.
Oh,
But it's
okay.
interesting though. Mhm.
Yeah, but it's definitely the word what.
Okay, thank you.
Right, right. As opposed, what am I? Am I human or am I an animal? Or, something like that. Right. Okay. All right.
Mm.
Now, with that, if we understand that one, number what have they listed here, number 14. If
114, right?
yeah, if they understand that one as being the height of ethical behavior, of recognizing, who and what I am, then Shammai, who's the partner or the protagonist, antagonist, whatever, is saying, no, I've got a different pithy statement. I've got a different neve of how you should live your life. Okay. The most important thing is make your study of Torah a fixed habit. Say little and do much, and greet all people with a cheerful smile. Okay. All right. So you got to go back to the first one. Okay. Make your study of Torah a fixed habit. All right. Um, the rabbis or the commentators said, what does that mean? Does that mean that there's a fixed time? Does that mean that you should have a particular ritual of an established ritual of, this is how I'm going to read the Torah, this is how I'm going to study Torah, this is how I'm going to teach the Torah, whatever? Is he saying that Torah should be the paramount aspect of your life, as opposed to Hillel saying, no, trying to understand my role in humanity and society is the most important? Is Shammai saying, no, Torah is the most important? Keva would be understood as not only fixed and established, but as fundamental. Okay. Or is he saying that everyone there should make the study of Torah their main occupation? Kind of is Shammai kind of sticking it back at Hillel because on the previous page, Hillel, had said, the study of Torah, this thing about do not do unto others what hateful to you, do not do to others, and all the rest is commentary. All the rest is the Torah. So go out and learn it. Go out and study it. So okay, if we have our premise that you need to be responsive, you need to be good to your neighbor. Now go and study Torah. Is that what Shammai is saying? See, even Hillel says you got to make Torah. Okay, and then of course, what some of the commentators do is they say, wait a minute, okay. The final phrase, greet all people with a cheerful smile. Wait a minute. This is the guy who, when that other person came to him, he hit him on the head. What do you mean greet everyone with a cheerful smile? So obviously the phrase the sever panim yafot is some kind of a facial expression, and that might have been a euphemism for for how you're supposed to greet everyone. It's definitely welcome everyone, welcome every person. The sever panim yafot, with some kind of a pretty countenance on your face. But exactly what that means, people will argue about it. Here they translate it as cheerful. Okay. Okay. What they list here is 118. And I think, was it Judy, were you the one who said that you had always heard that on the world stands on three things? And then there's the second one. So this is the second wording of it.
Okay.
Right? The world is sustained by three things: by truth, by justice, and by peace. Now this is a different rabbi. This is not Hillel and Shammai. Okay, and the original one was Shimon HaTzadik of Simon the Just, was the one that we sing in our Torah service, Al HaTorah. The world is sustained. The three legs of the stool, if you will, on Torah, on worship, and on deeds of loving kindness. This one is saying truth, justice. You always want to go into Superman: truth, justice, and the American way, right? But by truth, by justice, and by peace, right? Okay, so what do you think? I mean, I think we understand what peace is. So I'm going to go to the other two. What do you think he means that by truth? And what does he mean by justice? Okay. Maimonides says that truth is, quote, intellectual and ethical perfection. And Maimonides is a rationalist. Everything has to be. He comes from Missouri. Everything has to be. You got to show me. You got to prove it. Okay. But truth is intellectual and ethical perfection, according to Maimonides. And then judgment or justice is having the proper system in place that will administer the societal norms and the requirements to bring about peace. But I will open that also to anybody who wants to comment or question, because these guys, this guy Shimon the son of Gamliel, doesn't go into Torah, doesn't go into worship, doesn't go into loving deeds. He's talking about truth, justice, and ultimately peace.
I always think of peace as being the ultimate goal of Judaism.
I think so too. But can you have peace without the others, or is it that these two are the primary avenues that lead to peace? You know, we in the prayer book, whether it's the public prayer book or whether it's the private prayer book for individuals at home, you know, praying for peace, and that's the way that it's phrased, is, you know, God grant us peace. You are the maker of peace. You are the source of peace, kind of thing, as opposed to grant or you know, bless us with the I don't want to say power, but bless us with the um with the ability, with the integrity to build a world of peace. Peace in the prayer book, at least, is a gift from God rather than something that we will be able to accomplish by our actions, relationships, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
I'm not sure that truth is always a good thing. Sometimes truth is not good for the other person.
You mean in the
You
sense
might
of like
hurt them.
the little white lie? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, just not telling them the whole truth, because like genealogy, maybe they would be hurt by knowing the whole truth. I don't know. In some cases, I'm not sure it would be the best.
So going back then to what we were talking about with Aaron, so is sometimes withholding some information or modifying the information the best way to bring about peace, or, you know, giving people the benefit
Yeah,
of the doubt?
exactly. To give him some time.
Okay.
I'm not sure justice is an absolute. If you look at different cultures, justice is defined differently in different cultures.
Sure.
So it's
What is there a relationship between justice and
just
peace? I mean, I'm sorry, between justice and
and
truth?
truth. Whose truth is it? Um, sort of what Judy is saying. Anyway,
Go ahead,
I
Ken.
think, Rabbi, I think there is a difference between truth and justice. I just do, in a very practical, literal sense, because the truth can be very harsh, but true nonetheless, and it could have been, could be an act which would have been a wrong act, but it was, you know, it happened and the like. So I think there's a difference there. But what I'm going back, I'm going to take this way back in that this was Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. So I have to assume that pretty much everything he did was study Torah back in the day. Would that be a fair assessment?
Go ahead. I think so. Sure. Sure.
Okay.
While you're
I
talking,
think
I'm going to see if I can find a date for him. Go ahead.
because in a prayer that we read, maybe it's on the Shabbat service or maybe high holiday service, but we speak about all the words of Torah are true. And right, and you can tell me or share with me where that's written, but I know we chant it. I think that truth and Torah are synonymous for him in this statement, so that you could supplant truth with Torah and it would have the same essence of the three pillars for him: Torah,
And I think
justice, and peace.
you'd
That's just
have
my
to have
take.
truth for justice too.
Truth or justice. But if Torah is truth, you've already have it. That's my layman's contribution to this particular discussion.
Okay.
I've never had it. I don't recall any reference to the Torah being referred to as justice. The Torah, in its essence, I've heard it referred to as truth.
Right.
And justice, of course, is interlaced within there, but it's not referred to. Someone would say, instead of saying Torah, they're going to talk about simply justice, and you wouldn't make the connection. So that's why I just think it's just maybe he meant that.
So you're saying that for Shimon,
Yes.
that when he says truth, that's synonymous with Torah,
Yes.
as opposed to the earlier guy who said that Torah, in not just the scroll, but Torah meaning all of Jewish sacred literature, that Torah is one of those three pillars.
Yeah.
And that you're saying that they're saying the same thing. Torah and truth.
In that portion, correct.
Okay. And then that similarly, that justice is the acts of love and kindness from the other.
I couldn't have explained it better.
They did it 2,000 years ago. We didn't, we're just struggling with it today. Yeah, right.
Huh. Yeah.
Okay.
The acts of loving kindness.
Is that the ultimate best expression of justice? Or I mean, as the commentators, like I said, the commentators and the primary commentator on the Mishnah is a guy by the name of, he goes by the name of Bartonero, which is where in Italy he came from. But he specifically is talking about the judicial system. Okay, that you need the judicial system. Yes, truth can mean Torah, can mean wisdom, can be enlightenment, and it can be all that. But in his mind, the justice or judgment here is definitely a judicial system.
Okay, and I'm very good with that, because I can think of 100 or more ways that justice would be a definitive, certain acts would be justice in different circumstances. But here's the thing: would Gamaliel
in Hebrew,
Gamaliel have said something or made a statement as the most important thing he could say about how the world is sustained without referring to Torah? I don't think so.
He could, if it was against the law for them to be studying Torah or
There you
teaching
go.
Torah at that point. And so he had to come up with, some kind of synonyms
Workaround, right.
or workaround. Exactly. To use other, it's like like how the idea of the Haftarah developed, because they weren't allowed to have the Torah readings, but they could have the parallel readings from the rest of the Bible that with enough of the code words and parallels that reminded them of what the Torah portion was.
Well, thank you for sharing that example, because I hadn't thought of that. But now that you've shared it, that reinforces my belief that in fact he's made the connection between truth and Torah.
Could very well be. Could very
Thank
well
you.
be.
So it
Next
was
time I
against
meet
the
him, I'll-
law.
I'm sorry.
It was against the law for Shammai and Gamliel
In
To
some
teach
period
Torah?
of
No,
time.
not Hillel and Shammai where they were, but Shimon ben Gamliel may have been teaching at a time when it was against the
Okay.
law to
So
openly
when would that have,
teach.
been?
Again, it could have been
So
times
you were
of
going to look
Syrian.
that up.
Could have been times of Syrian Greeks. Could have been times of the Romans.
Oh,
Somewhere between 2nd century BCE and the end of the first or 2nd century Common Era, somewhere in that, like in
I
that
never thought of
300-year period.
It
Yeah.
could have been during the Spanish Inquisition as well.
No,
I mean, not that he
no.
lived then, but I
Yeah,
mean, where
right,
people
right,
lied
right.
or they changed things in order to
Right,
not be
right,
murdered.
certainly, and any some of the we know that certain of the Caesars allowed allowed we'll call it Torah study, and others did not. So it's hard to say. I
didn't know that.
don't know offhand specifically the dates and which emperor may have been in control and where Shimon ben Gamliel. I think I know. I think he was in Yavne, but I'm not. Don't quote me. Of what the particular countervailing attitude was at that particular point in time. But there
I just
certainly
never
were
thought of it.
periods. There certainly
I
were
didn't know.
periods when the open study or teaching of Torah was forbidden. Yeah. Okay, I want to just do 2 or 3 quick ones just to look at, and then get into one more conversation discussion, open study. So it's a little story. If you look at the one here that they listed as 2.6. So I got to tell a story, because I identify this one, and this going back to Hillel. So again, it may be out of chronology, but Hillel said that the reticent do not learn, the hot-tempered do not teach. Okay, so I have a little story. In 1970 was when those of us when we were beginning rabbinic school, beginning seminary, the first year was in Jerusalem. Now, I had the privilege of studying in Israel a few years before, but some of my classmates had never been to Israel, whatever. And we came to class the first day, and the professor, who was this elderly Jerusalemite, we say. He's born, Abraham Chen was his name. Born in Jerusalem, spoke a pristine Hebrew, a biblical scholar, and the whole thing. So he welcomed us. He welcomed gentlemen. There were only men in the class. Welcome, gentlemen, and da 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 da. I want to test your knowledge, because I've never really met all of these, North American students who want to be rabbis and da da da. So let me test your knowledge, he says. And so, and everybody kind of sits up a little straighter in their chairs. So he says, okay, who remembers the story of Abraham and Isaac, where Abraham was told to take his son up to the top of the mountain, and whatever? I go, yeah, okay, all right. Does anybody know where that is in the Torah? We said, yeah, that's Genesis 22. And somebody answered. He says, okay, yeah. And what's the name of the Torah portion? Well, it's in the Vayera. We know that too. Okay. Da, da, da. And he says, okay, tell me, where did that take place? And, that's the class. Everybody raised it. Well, it's on Mount Moriah. We know that. We know that from the text, because most of us know that story almost by heart. And he said, no, that's not the answer I'm looking for. What do you mean it's not the answer that I'm looking for? He says, where did it take place? And so we all open up our Bibles, and here it says right here, Mount Moriah. He says, that's not the answer I'm looking for. Well, what's the answer you're looking for? He says, follow me. And so the 12 of us get up from our seats and walk down the hallway onto the back of the building, and he points to Mount Moriah. And he said, that's the answer that I wanted you to it says right there. Okay. I want you to identify that it's right there. You are in that place. Okay. And so he brought us back into the classroom, and he said, I apologize for the little trickery and whatever, but I wanted you to understand that when you're sitting here in Jerusalem, you're literally in Jewish history. And da 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 da. And then he said, now I'm going to teach you a phrase that you've probably never heard unless you've studied Pirkei Avot. Okay? And he proceeded to make us memorize this phrase, what they're listed here as 2.6. Then they in English, the reticent do not learn, the hot-tempered do not teach. Okay, lo bashan lamad v'lo paktan melamed. Okay, and he said, you will. He's saying this. He says, I've been teaching like for 50 years. Okay, this is my motto. He said. Okay, I will be as patient with you as possible. Okay, but you can't be inhibited. You can't be reticent to ask questions, to challenge me, and whatever. I will never be hot-tempered. I will never be irate towards you. He said that's my phrase. So every time I encounter this phrase, I go back to August of 1970 and seeing this beautiful man teach this particular verse and make it part of who we are. So I wanted to show you back that. Oh, and one other thing he says, but so when you're trying to understand lo baishan, the reticent, or the don't be embarrassed, okay? Don't be inhibited, and then if you're trying to teach, don't be hot-tempered, don't be irate. But always it's always give and take. Okay. The teacher always has something to learn, and the student always has something to teach, which those of you who have been teachers know how important that is. Okay. Because you can always learn something new from the questions of your own students. Okay. Jump with me now down to where it's listed of 213, and we'll look at that, and then I want to put it into a different context. Okay, this is Yochanan ben Zakkai, who was one of the very famous rabbis of the time, not only as a teacher, incidentally, but also as a military strategist, incidentally. Yochanan ben Zakkai said to his disciples, consider well the good that one should always seek. And then these are his. So here's what you have to picture. Here, he's the teacher role that I was just talking about. Okay, Yochanan ben Zakkai is the teacher, the old experienced veteran guy who is being very kindly towards his students. Okay, and then these are some of his students. So he says, consider well, so what is the good? What's the ultimate good that you should display in your life? I guess is the way that the teacher is asking. Okay, Rabbi Eliezer, one of his students, says a kindly eye. Rabbi Joshua said to be a good friend. Rabbi Yossi said to be a good neighbor. They make a big distinction between friend and neighbor. Okay, I was talking about that in a sermon a couple of weeks ago. Rabbi Shimon said had to have foresight or perspective. Rabbi Elazar said to have a good heart. Then that's the teacher, Yochanan ben Zakkai, said, I prefer the words of Rabbi Elazar ben Arach, because his words include yours as well. Which is the one that's a good heart. Okay. So the literature, the midrash, which is literature that some of you may have heard me refer to a lot. The midrash comes along and tells a story of one of these rabbis on his deathbed, and there's a story that he gathers his disciples. This is a midrash that comes along as a commentary to this quote. He says when he's on his deathbed, he gathers his disciples, and to each of them according to their personalities, he gives them a part of his soul. So to one of his disciples, he gives them his eyesight. The word here is his foresight. Okay, his sense of vision. To another, he gives them his tongue, meaning his ability to speak and to teach and always tell the truth, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. To someone else, he gives them his hands to always be able to do good and to reach out and help. But the ultimate, to his favorite of his students, he wills his heart, because he was told by his teacher that the best gift that he would ultimately have is to have a good heart. Okay, so I don't know if there's debate or discussion about that, but I've had classes with some groups where I said, okay, if you had to give one of your senses, vision or your strength, or your wisdom, or your heart, your sense of, and we're not going to get to it, but there's one of these quotes much later on that says basically the heart is where your soul resides. So if you had to give one of those senses or choose one of those senses to reflect, to be your inheritance, your legacy to family members, students, whomever you are going to follow you, what would it be? If you had to choose one, what would it be? I think that's what this is trying to ask.
I don't think I have any.
Right?
I'm sorry, you're cut off there, Judy.
I don't think I have any.
Oh,
You don't have
Judy.
any?
I think of something to think, oh, I'm not good at that. I'm not good at that.
Even your heart?
Yeah, I guess.
Oh, I guess. I think.
Yes.
The little that I know you, I think. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to have to close up, but this is kind of that's an introduction to some of this literature. Maybe next year we can come back and go on with some more chapters and whatever. I did want to in 2 weeks from today, I did want to look at the other kind of where the history, rather than these pithy nivim, these pithy statements. I want to look at some of the wisdom that comes out of some of the stories in that literature, whether it's the Chelm, whether it's the Shalom Aleichem, whether it's the Tevye kind of character, whether it's the Hasidic Rebbe, the miracle worker or the faith healer. Some of those stories, and what do we learn from them as well? That's the intention. It'll be 2 weeks from now, and again, we'll send out some examples for people to look at beforehand.
Very good.
Okay,
Okay, thank you very much.
All right.
Enjoyed it.
Thank you.
you're very
Rabbi.
welcome. Thanks for joining. Everybody, be well.
You bet.
You
All right.
too.
Talk to you soon.
All right.
Okay,
Bye, everybody.
bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye, Ken.